Hey, what's up everyone? Dragon back again, here to tell you that you should be reading all the Weyrs of Pern. So All the Weyrs of Pern is a 1991 novel written by the late Anne McCaffrey, and it is a part of the Dragonriders of Pern series, the kind of very long, ongoing, illustrious science fiction, even though some people might consider it fantasy because it has dragons in it. But as we talked about in Dragon's Dawn, when I talked about that entry in the series, it's not really fantasy. It takes place on an alien planet. These are the descendants of colonists who traveled from our star system to this star system, and the dragons themselves are genetically engineered organisms engineered from an indigenous species on the planet. So they're basically genetically engineered aliens that just happen to look like dragons, and that's why they even start calling them dragons, because it's like, well, they look like dragons, let's just call them dragons, but they're technically not dragons. They're, bioengineered aliens, which is really kind of badass when you think about it that way. But anyway, this story takes place many moons after Dragon's Dawn. It is in the more current history in terms of the timeline in which all these books takes place. Like I said, between her and her son Todd McCaffrey, they've kind of written books that jump, along through different points in history, and these books take place kind of towards the end of the timeline in which these books take place. And it picks up after the Renegades of Pern, which is the book that previous, where they uncover basically this artificially intelligent computer called Avis, which is a relic from the original settlers who came to the planet. Basically, it's this artificially intelligent computer that has all the knowledge and history of the colonists and basically mankind stored within it. And essentially, it's kind of like a lost ark of information. I mean, by this point in time, the citizens of Pern have lost pretty much all the technology that the original settlers came with. But with this computer, this Avis is now essentially reteaching them how to basically reteaching them what they have lost as a culture, and it basically is going to teach them how to essentially stop thread, which is this this biological agent that falls from the sky basically every, I think, like half a millennia or so. And basically why the dragons were even engineered to begin with, because the two things that kill thread is water and fire, and the dragons can breathe fire, and therefore there we have it. But basically explaining to them now that the two Dawn Sisters, the lights in the sky, are actually the remnants of these spaceships, and that utilizing these ships and using the dragon's ability to kind of teleport, essentially, they can utilize the spaceships. They can basically drive off this giant comet that is in this kind of orbit around the star system that brings thread when it does, and by pushing it out of this orbit, it will essentially break the cycle and stop threadfall forever. But to do this, they have to relearn much of what they lost, and they have to basically put their trust in this computer, in this piece of technology, this relic of their ancestors. And for me, what I really took away from the story is, we see so much in science fiction, the horrors of science gone wrong, technology run amok, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence. There's no shortage of science fiction stories, both in print and in film, of machines becoming self-aware, and the first thing they want to do is fuck us over. And admittedly, I love I love The Matrix, well, the first one. I love Terminator, well, the first two. And I love stories like that, and going as far back as Metropolis, even, which is I think is kind of the granddaddy of all these kind of machines rise up and put a cramp in our style kind of stories. And while I think that is a viable story, and I think it is a good cautionary tale, because we have to always be careful with any kind of great leap forward we make in technology. There's always the risk of something going awry or something not working out to our benefit. And with the idea of creating machines that can kind of think for themselves, being sentient, essentially, there's always the risk of, well, what happens when they become self-aware and they look around at us and realize, they don't like us very much. What do we do then? So I think those stories definitely have their place, and they are important. But with that said, I don't think that's the only kind of AI story you can tell. I think there's plenty of room to tell interesting stories of what happens if these machines that we create to essentially better our lives do just that, better our lives. And what better way to tell that kind of story in a setting where most of the technology we had in a space age kind of, point in human history has now been lost. And to uncover this machine, this machine who especially was created to educate and teach humans, to store knowledge and information and history, and is now essentially going to be kind of their guiding light out of, in a way, the Dark Ages. Again, they're not Dark Ages in the sense that these people are kind of superstitious savages. They're a kind, civilized society, but they're using primitive means of technology. They're using beasts of burden. They don't have flying cars. They don't have spaceships anymore. So they've lost a lot of what their ancestors had. I mean, their ancestors were the Jetsons, basically. So in other words, this machine that has this vast array of knowledge, now it's been awoken, and its sole purpose is to basically teach these people. It's almost viewing the people of this world like children. And there's almost this kind of strange, I mean, it's very subversive, it's not really overt, but almost kind of this parental kind of vibe you get from it, where you get the sense that while, yes, it's running based on how it was programmed to operate. I mean, while it is self-aware, while it is sentient, it's still following its programming. It's still doing what it was designed to do. It's operating in the way it was meant to. It's not acting weird or anything. It's not, having them do weird things or build weird things or having them, misconstruing the history and trying to convince. No, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It brings itself up to speed. It comes to terms with what's happened, how long it's been dormant, and the state of, the colonists now on Pern. And from there it says, okay, here's what we need to do to get you guys, A, up to speed, B, let me tell you who I am, and C, this whole thread menace, let me help you get rid of that, because once you don't have to worry about that anymore, once you don't have to worry about death falling from the sky anymore, you can really start pushing your civilization forward. Essentially kind of trying to make this civilization what the original settlers had intended to be. I mean, they already kind of have the mood, right? It's this kind of agrarian, very kind of peaceful, civilization that really enjoys learning. There's the Harper's Hall are all about education and knowledge. So there is a thirst for knowledge in this world, which is key. They haven't lost that, and because of that, a lot of them, while still being some of them being are not everyone is completely taken with Avis, but for the most part, they're fascinated and they're curious because they're going to now essentially get kind of almost first-hand accounts of their ancestors and really learn about who they were. And they're seeing now video footage play out. It's kind of like if we suddenly found video recordings of Caesar or Cleopatra, or basically seeing a visual recording of something from ancient history, and be able to see it happen with our own eyes. That's basically what it's like for them to see this, to learn what Avis is teaching them, to help them uncover uses of medicine, technology, energy sources, that will literally transform their whole civilization, and kind of basically overnight. And over the course of this book and the few that follow, you see great advances in their civilization, but you also see this renewed kind of thirst for knowledge. Everyone is now excited to learn. Everyone wants to meeting Avis as kind of like this meeting a celebrity now. They're all like, oh, because what he knows is why not? What he knows is, for them, it's like opening the door that were behind were all the secrets they've ever wanted to know. They knew their ancestors were far more advanced than them, and that they lived in a way that transcended anything they know today. So for them to be able to recapture that, to be able to essentially bring back that kind of golden age of science, is something that they don't really want to pass up. And now they realize it's something they can obtain. They just needed the guidance, and with Avis, they can now reobtain that level of technological sophistication. And it's really a story about what happens when people just embrace technology and not be afraid of it because it's new and different, even though in the case of this, technology is very old. But you always hear it in the media now. We live in an age now where they're making breakthroughs in technology and science left and right almost every day, and it seems like with every big leap forward, with every person you find who's excited about, there's always some naysayer, someone who's is basically saying that this new method of gene therapy, this new piece of technology, this new app is another sign of the end times. That oh my God, you mentioned stem cell research around certain people, and they think that you've committed some horrible atrocity. They think it's just as bad as holding up a puppy and just stabbing it in the neck. And it's they don't really, they're afraid of it because they don't understand it, even though its whole purpose is to better your lives. And with every piece of technology, it can be used for good, it can be used for bad. And when you read this story, you can see how, in a different story, Avis could have been a very kind of menacing figure, if you will. This piece of technology, this artificial intelligence that, holds all this vastry of knowledge, and how perhaps it could steer this whole civilization down the wrong road if it really wanted to for its own nefarious, purposes. But it doesn't. It guides humanity as children, and as children, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to be a little rough around the edge, but it doesn't mean they're inherently evil. It doesn't mean they're inherently bad. It doesn't mean they should be destroyed. If your kid's, is drinking from a sippy cup on his high chair and he spills it, you don't throw him in a fire. You clean it up. You explain to them what they did wrong, and you teach them how to not make that same mistake the second time. And that's what Avis does in this story. He understands that humanity, this version of humanity, is essentially like infants. They don't know what they don't know, not because they are incapable, because they're simple. It's just they have not had the benefit of having someone to teach them, like we all do. When we have our parents, bestow upon us what they've learned over the course of their life, they teach it to us, and we combine those lessons with our own life experiences, and we grow to become the people we are. And that is what Avis is doing in this story with humanity on Pern. He's viewing them as children who need to be taught and are capable of learning, and once they do learn, will be capable of great things, just as their ancestors were. So he feels like he's looking upon them with a degree of fondness. And this is a machine, and it shows you that we don't need to always be afraid of technology. If anything we need to be afraid of are the people behind the technology, because ultimately the technology is only going to do what it was designed to do. So if we don't, impose our own sense of malevolence within our technology, there's no reason to think that it's going to basically reflect the negative sides of ourselves. If we put only the good, even if there's a lot of negativity within ourselves, we don't have to pass that on to the technology. And because that's now the original colonists of Pern did with Avis, he, basically being the children of those original settlers in a weird way, is now passing on that same sense of good and knowledge onto the newest generation of Pern. And he's kind of continuing this cycle of knowledge and being excited by knowledge, and having knowledge be that which lifts you up. So there's a lot of cool action sequence in the story. There's a lot of great science fiction moments, but at the core of this story, I feel that's what it's really about. It's about realizing that technology is only as good or bad as what we put into it, as what of ourselves we put into it. So if you want to make a Terminator, you'll make a Terminator. You'll make something that reflects the destructive side of ourselves. That's how you get the T-800. But if you want to put the excitement for knowledge, that thirst for knowledge, that quest to learn something new, you create something like Avis. And because of that, the future is now in good hands, because it is basically in the hands of this machine whose sole purpose is to just kind of spread that desire for growth and knowledge. And so that's, I know, it sounds maybe a little hokey in a weird way, but I know, I kind of had a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling after I read this particular story. By the way, I'm pretty sure I'm saying it right, Avis. I think it's how you say it. If I've been pronouncing it wrong, I apologize. But that's kind of what the core of the story is. It's, what happens when we just embrace technology, not get freaked out by it, and then work together under this common kind of this banner of like, hey, let's celebrate a quest for knowledge, and let's let that technology essentially guide us and help us, because ultimately it is an extension of us. So if we're scared of the technology, what we're really saying is that we're scared of ourselves. We're afraid of what we put into it. So, you know, the people of Pern at the time of the story are essentially trusting their ancestors by trusting, you know, this artificial intelligence, because he is essentially the closest thing to their ancestors that they're ever going to have. He's essentially their link to the past. You know, he's something that was created directly by them. And he is taking all the best parts of them, because that's all they put into him, it's just the good parts of them, and now giving it to this modern age, this newer generation. And and by doing that, they are kind of, for the first time, you know, kind of having a moment with the past where they're realizing that, you know, we are now connected as directly as we can be with our ancestors and the best part of our ancestors. So that's what I kind of took away from this story. It's one of my favorite Dragonriders of Pern books. And again, I think it was a period of time when she was writing these books where I think she was at her best. I think this group of characters and this story arc that we're going through now in terms of the history of Pern, it was always my favorite. So I don't know. It's kind of where, you know, the past and the future of Pern kind of collide, kind of metaphorically and technologically speaking. So it's, for that reason alone, I think it's one of the best in the series. I mean, that's my opinion. But I know, again, I think it says a lot, and I think it's a book that has a lot to say, and it does so in a very eloquent way. It doesn't get like really preachy. It doesn't, like, you know, beat you over the head with it or anything. I think it delivers the message in a very clear, concise, but, you know, meaningful way. So for that reason, all the Weyrs of Pern, I highly recommend it. Have you read it? If so, what did you think? How does it stack up in, you know, the pantheon of Dragonriders, you know, books, and just, you know, Anne McCaffrey's writing in general? Give me some of your thoughts. Let me know. If you haven't read it, no need to fear. I was always able to leave a link in the description section below where you can pick it up, check it out. Come back, give me some of your thoughts, and let me know what you think. If you've read some of the other Dragonriders of Pern books, but maybe haven't gotten to this one, you know, check it out and then let me know how you feel it stacks up. Or if this is your first book, I would actually recommend reading The Renegades of Pern prior to that, just to kind of get a little backstory on how they found him. But it's not essential. But if you really kind of want to get a more well-rounded, you know, that kind of backstory behind it, you start with that one. But otherwise, you can just jump right into this one. It's a pretty kind of solid story unto itself, so I think. But yeah, so that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace!